Something happened this week that most people looked at like just another political fight, another round of Trump versus somebody. But the truth is, what happened between Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene is much bigger than a disagreement or a social media outburst. Because when a former president publicly cuts off one of his most loyal defenders, when he calls her a traitor, when she fires back with accusations, moral appeals, and emotional testimony, and when all of it happens right as Congress forces a historic release of Epstein-related files, you're not watching a spat, you're watching a shift. Most people saw the drama, but very few understood the meaning. Today, I'm going to walk you through what changed, why it changed, and why this single moment is hinting at something deeper inside the Republican Party, inside Congress, and inside Trump's own strategy. Once you see the full picture, you won't see this week's headlines the same way ever again. And to understand how we got here, we need to start with the moment the conflict cracked open. Picture this. You're on Air Force One. Reporters are aboard. The president is in a reflective mood, talking about his schedule, his priorities, the wins his administration is racking up. Then someone asks about Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman who, up until a few days ago, was one of his most visible, most vocal, most unwavering allies. She campaigned for him. She defended him on every major network. She spent her own money to support his election. And now? Trump's answer was blunt. He said she is not in any way aligned with his thinking anymore. He said something happened to her over the past month or two that she changed politically. He suggested her constituents wouldn't be happy. He even hinted that people were already calling him, wanting to challenge her in a primary. That alone would have been a story. But it didn't stop there. Over the next couple of days, Trump made multiple social media posts about it, calling her all sorts of names. Now, I'm not here to mock or say who's right and wrong. I'm here to provide what is publicly available. And this is crucial information for you to understand what's going on. Washington insiders were stunned by this, not just by the severity, but by the speed. 1 week, she's a trusted ally. The next, she's being called a traitor on a platform with millions of followers. So what happened? What could possibly cause such a dramatic falling out in such a short time? The answer isn't just about personality. It's not just about ego or hurt feelings, though those certainly played a role. The answer is about a choice that was forced on both of them by something bigger than either one. A congressional vote that was gaining momentum. A vote that Trump very much did not want to see happen, and a vote that Marjorie Taylor Greene was determined to support no matter what. That vote was about the Epstein files. Now, if you're not deeply embedded in the day-to-day political news cycle, let me catch you up quickly. Over the past several months, there's been growing pressure from some members of Congress and from the public to compel the Department of Justice to release additional documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein, as you probably know, was a wealthy financier who was convicted years ago of serious crimes involving underage girls. He died in jail under controversial circumstances, and ever since, there's been a cloud of questions about who else might have been involved, who knew what, and why so much of the story has remained hidden. Some lawmakers, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, believed that full transparency was overdue. They argued that survivors deserved answers. They argued that powerful people shouldn't be shielded just because of their wealth or connections, and they pushed for a vote that would force the DOJ to release more records. Trump, on the other hand, took a very different view. He argued publicly and privately that this was a distraction. He said Republicans should be focused on the issues that matter most to everyday Americans: affordability, inflation, immigration, the economy. He felt that Democrats were using the Epstein story as a political weapon, a way to muddy the waters and pull attention away from the successes his administration was achieving. He called the whole effort a hoax, not because he was denying Epstein's crimes, but because he believed the way Democrats were framing it was designed to trap him and his party. And here's where it gets complicated. Trump's name does appear in some of the documents that have been released. Not because he's been accused of any wrongdoing, reporters and officials have been very clear about that, but because he was part of the same social and business circles in New York and Florida where Epstein operated for years. Trump himself has said he cut ties with Epstein a long time ago, and there's evidence to support that. But the fact that his name keeps coming up makes the whole topic uncomfortable for him. It keeps the focus on something he'd rather leave in the past. Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, saw it differently. She didn't see a distraction. She saw an opportunity, maybe even a moral obligation, to stand with the survivors. She met with some of them. She heard their stories. She learned about the decades they'd spent waiting for justice, waiting for someone in power to take them seriously, and she made a decision she was going to support that vote, and she wasn't going to back down, no matter who asked her to. So you had two people, both deeply invested in the MAGA movement, both committed to conservative principles, but now pulling in completely opposite directions. Trump wanted the party to move on, to stay focused on his broader agenda. Greene wanted to use her platform to fight for transparency and accountability, even if that meant going against the president's wishes. And when those two motivations collided, things got personal fast. One of the things that seemed to bother Trump the most wasn't just that she disagreed with him, it was how public she made that disagreement. During an interview on a major network, Greene talked about how she'd reached out to Trump privately, how she tried to explain her position, how she believed the survivors deserved to be heard. And then, and this is the part that reportedly really upset Trump, she posted screenshots of private text messages between her and the president. Now, in Trump's world, loyalty is everything. It's the currency that matters most. And part of loyalty, in his view, is keeping private conversations private. When she made those messages public, it felt like a betrayal. It felt like she was using their relationship for political leverage, or maybe for media attention. And that, more than almost anything else, seemed to cross a line for him. Greene, for her part, said she did it to show that she had tried to engage respectfully, that she wasn't just going rogue. But she also said something else that added another layer to the conflict. She said that after Trump's attacks on her went public, she started receiving a flood of threats, serious threats, and she believed that his words, especially calling her a traitor, were fueling that hostility. She said it wasn't just about politics anymore, it was about her safety. So now you had two people who both felt wronged. Trump felt betrayed by someone he'd supported and elevated. Greene felt abandoned and endangered by someone she'd defended for years. And both of them were reacting emotionally, publicly, and without much interest in backing down. But here's the thing. If this were just about two strong personalities clashing, it would be a footnote. What makes this moment significant, what makes it worth paying attention to, is what it reveals about the bigger picture. Because beneath all the personal drama, something else was happening. Something political. Something structural. And I'm not a fan of saying this, but the Republican Party started showing cracks. For the better part of a decade, Donald Trump has been the single most powerful figure in the Republican Party. His endorsement could make or break a candidate. His approval could determine whether a policy moved forward or stalled. His base was fiercely loyal, and that loyalty extended to the people around him. If you were with Trump, you were safe. If you crossed him, you were out. But this time, when Trump made it clear he didn't want the Epstein files vote to go forward, something unusual happened. The vote went forward anyway, and it wasn't close. The House passed it with near-unanimous Republican support. Only one Republican voted against it. That means dozens and dozens of lawmakers, many of whom owe their careers to Trump's endorsement, voted against his wishes. Now, some analysts are saying this is just a one-time thing, a unique issue where the politics were too complicated for Trump to control. But others are seeing it as a sign of something bigger. They're calling it the beginning of a lame duck phase, a period where Trump's influence starts to wane because he's in his second term, because he won't be on the ballot again, and because lawmakers are starting to think about their own futures, not just his. Marjorie Taylor Greene's shift is part of that. Whether she's positioning herself for a future presidential run, or whether she's genuinely following her conscience on this issue, or whether it's some combination of both, the fact is, she's willing to publicly break with Trump in a way that would have been unthinkable just a year or two ago. And then there's the tone she's been using lately. In interviews over the past few days, Greene has done something surprising. She's apologized. Not for supporting the Epstein files release, she's standing firm on that, but for the way she's conducted herself in the past. She's talked about wanting to end toxic politics. She said she regrets some of the harsh language she's used over the years. She's even said she wants people to be kinder to each other, to find a new path forward. Now, if you know anything about Marjorie Taylor Greene's political brand, you know that this is a big shift. She built her career on being combative, on calling out her enemies, on never backing down. So why the change? Some people think it's genuine. They think maybe the experience of meeting Epstein survivors, of hearing their stories, of realizing the human cost of secrecy and power, maybe that changed her. Maybe it made her rethink her approach. Others think it's strategic. They think she's trying to broaden her appeal, to position herself as a more serious, more mature leader. If she's planning to run for higher office, governor, senator, maybe even president, she'll need to reach beyond the hardcore base. She'll need to show she can be thoughtful, empathetic, capable of growth. Either way, the transformation adds yet another layer of complexity to this whole situation, because now it's not just Trump versus Greene. It's Trump versus a version of Greene who's signaling she might be evolving past the role he wants to find for her. And that brings us to one of the most controversial moments in this entire saga. During one of her interviews, Greene was asked why Trump was fighting so hard to stop the release of these files. And she didn't just say, "I don't know," or "you'd have to ask him." She raised a question. She asked out loud, on camera, whether there might be pressure coming from somewhere else, whether a foreign government might be involved. And she posted an image referencing donations from a pro-Israel lobbying group. Now, she later clarified that she wasn't making accusations. She said she was simply asking questions, that she didn't have proof of anything, that she was just reflecting the confusion a lot of people were feeling. But the damage was done. Because in today's media environment, once you put an idea like that out there, once you hint at foreign influence or hidden pressure, it takes on a life of its own. Trump's team pushed back hard. They said it was baseless, irresponsible, and frankly insulting. Some commentators said Greene had crossed a line, that she was dabbling in conspiracy theories. Others said she was just doing what journalists should be doing, asking uncomfortable questions about power and influence. But here's what's undeniable. That moment crystallized the break. It wasn't just about policy anymore. It wasn't just about strategy. It was about trust. And once trust is broken, especially in public, especially in politics, it's almost impossible to put back together. So when you step back and look at the full arc of what happened here, you start to see the outlines of something much larger than a personal feud. Let's talk about Trump's side first, because understanding his perspective is crucial to understanding why this blew up the way it did. Donald Trump is not a typical politician. That's obvious. But one thing people sometimes forget is that he thinks like a businessman, specifically, like someone who's built brands, managed crises, and controlled narratives for decades. And right now, heading into the back half of his second term, he's trying to do something very specific. He's trying to reposition his administration's message around the issues that move voters. Not the issues that get the most media attention, not the issues that generate the most outrage on social media, but the issues that actually determine whether people feel better or worse about their lives. Affordability. That's the big one. The cost of groceries, gas, housing, healthcare, whether your paycheck goes as far as it used to, whether you can retire comfortably or whether you're worried about running out of money. These are the things that, according to every poll, every focus group, every town hall, matter most to most Americans, especially seniors, especially working families, especially people living paycheck to paycheck. Trump knows this. His team knows this. And they've been working hard to make sure that every speech, every policy announcement, every media appearance reinforces a simple message: we're making your life more affordable. We're bringing costs down. We're putting Americans first. But here's the problem. Every day that the news cycle is dominated by Epstein, by old emails, by questions about who knew what and when, that's a day the message doesn't get through. That's a day where instead of talking about inflation or immigration or jobs, Trump is answering questions about parties he attended in the 1990s, about people he used to know, about documents that may or may not contain anything new. From his point of view, it's a trap, a distraction designed by political opponents to keep him on defense, to keep him talking about the past instead of the future. And when members of his own party, people he supported, people he's elevated, join in pushing that narrative forward, it feels like they're working against him, whether they mean to or not. Now, I'm not saying his view is the only valid one. That's up for you to decide. But it's important to understand it, because it explains why he reacted so strongly. This wasn't just about Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was about a broader frustration that his own team, his own coalition, wasn't staying focused on the mission. And there's something else. Trump is keenly aware that he's in his second term. He can't run again. That changes the math. It means his power isn't just about what he can do for himself, it's about what he can do for the movement, for the party, for the people who will come after him. But if the party starts fracturing, if loyalty starts breaking down, if lawmakers start making decisions based on their own political futures instead of his priorities, then his ability to shape the agenda diminishes. Fast. Some of his advisors have reportedly been worried about exactly this. They've been watching the Republican caucus carefully, looking for signs that Trump's grip is loosening. And this Epstein vote was one of those signs. Because it showed that even on an issue where Trump made his position crystal clear, even when he personally called members and urged them to vote no, even when he publicly labeled it a distraction and a hoax, the vote still passed, overwhelmingly. That's not supposed to happen. Not in the Trump-era Republican Party. But it did. And that's one reason why this feud with Greene matters so much. It's not just about her. It's about what her defiance represents. A party that's beginning to think beyond Trump, even while he's still in office. Now, let's flip the coin and look at the other side, because Marjorie Taylor Greene's position tells us something equally important about where the Republican base is right now. Greene didn't just wake up one morning and decide to pick a fight with Donald Trump. By all accounts, this was a deeply personal decision for her, rooted in conversations she had with survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. These were women who were teenagers when they were victimized. Women who've spent decades trying to get anyone in a position of power to take their stories seriously. Women who watched as the justice system gave Epstein a sweetheart deal, as powerful men seemed to get away with everything, as the documents that might reveal the full scope of what happened stayed locked away. And when Greene met them, when she heard their stories, something shifted. She later said that she couldn't, in good conscience, walk away from them. She couldn't prioritize political strategy over their pain and let the files stay